I want to add just a couple of words to what Bill shared there. Number one, you may look at some of those numbers and your eyes start to glaze over, saying, you know, that's a lot in a hurry to really grasp and digest and understand. You don't have to be a CPA like Bill in order to have good income and expense statements and good balance sheets for your church. There are several really good computer programs out there that are relatively inexpensive that once you get them set up right and you simply enter in your contributions and your expenses, will generate these reports automatically for you at the push of a button. And if you're interested in figuring out how to do that, I'd be glad to help you. I'm sure Bill would as well. But it's not that big a task. It takes some work up front to get it all set up. Once you do, it's a matter of just keeping up with the day-to-day transactions, and at any time you can generate these reports. Most churches I'm familiar with, Bill, can't even produce an income and expense statement, let alone a balance sheet. What my experience has been is that most churches, when they go to a bank to borrow money, will present a check register. And that does a banker absolutely no good. Absolutely no good. One of two things is going to happen if you go to the bank with that. He's either going to say, thanks but no thanks, turn you down, or he's going to jack the interest rate to cover the extra risk that he's assuming because he doesn't know exactly where you are. The balance sheet is a list of all the assets that you have, things of value, and a list of all the liabilities, things that you owe, and the difference between the two. A banker is interested in that because he wants to know if in the unlikely event he has to foreclose and take over that property and sell the assets off, is there enough value there to pay back the liabilities? Okay? That's one of the main things he's looking for. On the income and expense statement, you're going to see all of your income followed by all of your expenses and then the difference between the two. The banker is interested in that because he wants to know that you've got enough extra cash coming in month by month to make the payments on the note that you want to borrow from him. Okay? So it's very important that you have those two statements, particularly if you're looking to finance or refinance any kind of indebtedness in the church. Extremely important. Bankers will be very impressed if you walk in with those two reports, and you'll get a lot quicker yes and a lot better rates. Very quickly, I want to talk about a subject here in about 10 minutes that normally would take about a 15 to 16 hour 2-day workshop to cover. So get ready. We're going to talk about personal financial management. Here is my theory on this. If you look at our culture that we live in today, what is it that we're bombarded by continually? Continually. Our culture tells us this, that things bring happiness, that debt is unavoidable and is expected. Everybody has debt, right? When I was a young man coming up, it was back during the days of inflation running at double digits. And so the general wisdom then was buy it now and pay it back later with cheaper dollars. You know, you're getting 10% per year raises. Inflation's at 15%, but you're getting at least 10% raises. Pay it back next year when you got 10% more dollars to pay it with. Well, we've learned that that was not a very wise thing to do. Debt is not unavoidable, and it should not be expected. The culture also tells us that just a little more money will solve all your problems. You have seen, and we're bombarded by it all the time. They tell me that you hear typically at least 3,000 commercial messages a day. On the radio, on TV, the internet, magazines, newspapers, billboards. I pulled into a gas station not too long ago to fill up my car with gas, looked up, and there was a TV screen blaring a commercial at me while I'm pumping gas. You can't get away from it. And they're all telling you, you can't get the pretty girl, you can't get the handsome guy, you can't be looked up to, you can't be successful, you can't have prestige, and yet, unless you own all of these things. what Dave Ramsey calls stuffitis. We all suffer from stuffitis, where we want all this stuff. Well, I think that is a ploy of the devil himself. If you look at Scripture, do you know that there are over 500 verses in Scripture that deal with the subject of prayer? And there's almost 500 that deal with the subject of faith. When it comes to money and possessions, there are over 2,000 scriptures that deal with that. If you look at the parables that Jesus taught, he taught more about money and wealth than he did any other subject. Why did he do that? Must have been important for some reason. I look at the scripture over in Matthew 6, I think it's verse 24 if I remember correctly, where Christ talks about you cannot serve two masters. Very familiar scripture. It says you're going to love one, hate the other, you're going to cling to one and push the other one away. You cannot love God and money. Now, has it ever struck you as rather odd that Christ in that one little verse juxtapositioned God and money? Why didn't he say God and the devil, God and Satan? He says God and money. I think it's because in our day in particular, money and finance and good stewardship of our material possessions are the number one tool that the devil is using to thwart the work of the church. We have congregations that are so far in debt, so many of them that are so far in debt, they come in on Sunday morning and they can't concentrate on your sermon for worrying about how they're going to pay the light bill the next week, or when they're going to come and foreclose on their house and throw them out in the street. I had a bishop in another state say not too long ago in a meeting I was in, he said, the devil does not care what you believe as long as you can't do anything about it. You can gather together in meetings like this, have a wonderful time, experience the blessings of the Lord, be refreshed, renewed, and if your pockets are empty when you walk out that door and you cannot minister to people in need, what good is it in this life? I'm sorry, folks, I'm starting to preach here, and I'm not a preacher, and so I'm on dangerous territory. But we've got to get over this issue of stuffitis and get to the place where we are financially free, okay? I'm on a one-man crusade, and I'm going to talk to you more about it in a little bit after Bill comes back up, of getting our churches and our church families and our pastors and their families totally out of debt, one family at a time. And I'm going to tell you how we're going to do it. And I've got a way that does work. I've got proof that it works. But I'm going to give you the 3 magic keys for conquering debt and achieving financial freedom, okay? I have searched high and low. I have spent hours looking to try to find out what are the real keys to conquering finance and conquering debt. And I finally come across them, and I'm going to share them with you today. Here they are. Are you ready? Write these down. Repeat them to your children. Speak about them as you rise up and as you lay down, as you go about your business day by day. The first one is this: earn more. The second one is this: spend less. The third magic key is this: earn more and spend less. Now you're saying, duh, that's so patently obvious. Why do you bring that up? It's because I am serious. I don't know of any other way to do it. If you know another way, please let me know, would you? I would really like to know if there's another way. This is the only way you can do it. What our culture tells us, though, is to do just the opposite. Play now, pay later. There's a very well-known commercial. You probably have seen it. It's from a company my daughter actually used to work for, J.P. Morgan Chase. This guy's sitting in front of the TV, an old model TV, and he's sitting there with a remote, flipping through the channels. His wife walks by and looks over and says, "You know, you're right. We really do need a new TV. He jumps out of his seat, grabs his little piece of plastic, goes running off down to the local Best Buy store, and the group Queen, some of you younger folks will recognize that musical group, breaks out singing the song, "I Want It All, and I Want It Now." Have you seen that commercial? Anybody here ever seen that commercial? That is the mantra. That is the phrase that we are hit with all the time. Our young folks are hit with it. We're hit with it. I want it all, and I want it now. And so we wind up playing now, and we wind up waiting until tomorrow to pay. That gets us in trouble every time. Remember what the Lord said in Proverbs: the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. I want to leave you with this one last thought, and then I'll give it back over to Bill. The good thing about conquering debt, now I gave you those three little pearls of wisdom there, the three keys of conquering debt, and you say, well, that's no great insight there, but it really is true. That's the only way I know to do it. But here is the good news. The only thing you need to worry about is working at the margin. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's suppose this is you and your spouse. And that red column that should shortly appear, all right, that red column, let's say it represents your expenses. And the green column next to it, look how tall those expenses are, by the way. You say, wow, that's a huge mountain I got to deal with. And the green column represents your income. Your problem lies where? The difference between those two columns, that little yellow area right there that we call the margin. It's simply the difference between what's coming in and what's going out. Remember I told you about cash flow is the lifeblood of any organization? If your church is doing this month in and month out, you're going out of business. You will soon be shutting the doors and walking away. The good news is, though, all you got to do is fix the margin and you're on your way. Let me show you. You just got to lower that red column just a bit. Bring those expenses down just a bit. Find a way to get that income up just a bit. And suddenly, now what is happening? You're running a surplus, right? You're paying off debt. You're building up wealth. Did you have to conquer all of that tall column of expenses all at once? No. All you had to do was to flip that margin. And so it can be done. All you got to do is to know how to be disciplined enough to get those expenses down and your income up, or a combination of the two, so that that margin, instead of being negative, suddenly becomes positive. And you're on your way to total financial health. I want to help you figure out how to get there very shortly.